So apparently my baby that I'm about to have in a few months, I want to name her something unique. Something that doesn't really have to do with our Indian culture, but my mother-in-law is absolutely beside herself because of this. She's ruining my life and making my relationship with her son so difficult. That's why I'm coming to you guys for this help. But first, let's start at the beginning so I can tell you exactly what's wrong with my mother-in-law. Okay, let's get one thing straight. Why does every mother-in-law I know have to be nosy? I get it's her son and his kids, which makes it her grandkids, but there's a line in every situation, and she's clearly overstepping hers. Yeah, you guessed by the title that things aren't going to look pretty for me. But let me just throw this out there that the void in clarity why I didn't want to submissively agree to my mother-in-law's demands. Well, for one, it's my kid. Tell me when we weren't allowed to name our kids. And the next thing is, enough is enough. I've done it, and I've had it with her trying to tell me what to do and what not to do. So before I get into rant mode, it's better than I explain what happened from end to end so you know why I'm definitely not the a-hole. Having lived in the United States from the time my husband and I were born meant we are very much accustomed to how the Western lifestyle thing is. How is that a bad thing? We still celebrate all the festival Hindus celebrate. I've even missed school for it, so you can say I'm definitely not forgetting my culture and roots, but I have to say my culture and heritage have been watered down. What do you expect? I've never been to India. The most India I've experienced was at my wedding, where it felt like the whole of India was there. Wedding aside, I'm a mix of the two cultures, meaning whatever I do is a watered-down version of the Indian culture. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, is a staunch Indian culture fanatic. I guess she's trying to preserve it, with it dying and all, but why impose on us? The story doesn't start here. Oh no, it starts way back when Jagan and I married and expected our first child. As a newly married couple with a child on the way, we were nothing but excited. And by the completion of a 6-month, we started discussing names for our first child. And we decided on the name Aria, since we were expecting a girl. It was the most beautiful name we've come up with, and in our blissful ignorance, we thought everything in the family would see the beauty in the name, and boy, I was wrong. On the 7th day after I've given birth, my mother-in-law had organized a family dinner and invited every Indian in the state that she knew. It was overcrowded and stuffy to say the least. With drinks and festivities in the air, I thought this would be the perfect moment to let the whole family know our beautiful baby girl's name. So, Jagan raised his glass of champagne and clinked it with the spoon to get everybody's attention. He managed to get everybody's attention except for a few drunk uncles. And we told everyone the name we picked. Now, I don't know if this was foolish of me or if it was my blissful oblivion as a newly married individual, but I expected people to applaud, people to cheer. I've never had a child before. How was I supposed to know how things should pan out? No one reacts. Instead, it seems as though everyone's looking at my mother-in-law to ensure they haven't reacted the wrong way. Before I continue anymore, let me give you an idea of what type of lady my mother-in-law is. She's the type of lady who commands respect, and if you don't give it to her, she'll throw a temper tantrum and ignore you for the rest of the week. She's a petty-minded person who always gets her way since no one has the energy to put up with her rants and her shows of dramatic pain and agony in the most minute situations. She's also the type of woman who could convince anyone to take her side, poison their minds against someone else. In short version, everyone in the family feared her and preferred to stay in her good books. Now, back to the story. We announced the name and it's just deafening with silence. Jagan's smiles fall as he clearly senses that his mother disapproves of the name. Before we have the time to register what is even happening next, she falls against a sofa, her hands on her forehead muttering, "We have forsaken the family's heritage." Jagan rushes towards his mother, as does every other aunt and uncle, as if more people giving her attention would make her feel better. I guess it sort of did though. because she sat up and looked us in the eye and said we were a disgrace for disowning our culture. Talk about being dramatic. It felt like I was living in an Indian teledrama. Of course, Jagan and I were perplexed, and we looked at each other before following her to her room, which was too big for her. She always wanted the best of everything. In my opinion, she was just a spoiled wife and daughter who was used to never taking no for an answer. That was until I came along. We stood in front of her like little children waiting to be reprimanded by the principal, and she didn't look me in her eyes even once. Instead, it felt as though I was not there at all. She addressed Jagan and said she thought it was an inappropriate name because it's too, quote, modern, and we need to change her child's name to something that would reflect our culture and heritage in it more. I don't know if it was her drama in the living room or because she was acting as though I didn't exist, but I lost it. I argued with her that this was our child and that we had every right to name her what we wanted. And so long as we taught Aria our culture, that was enough. Quote, then your child is not part of our culture. The fact that she even said this to my face about her grandchild beats me. The fact that our child is not part of our culture? Still, the anger I felt then led me to storm out of the room with Jagan following. We left her wretched house without greeting any of our relatives and drove home in silence. I think all that time in silence had fueled my anger and rage, and when we were finally alone in the room sipping on some tea, I asked Jagan what he thought. In my defense, I wanted to know if I was being dramatic and overreacting. After all, I just wanted to keep the peace in the family so that Aria would have a normal relationship with her extended family. Jagan said if we were talking about being dramatic, his mother was more dramatic than I had ever been, given that Aria was our daughter. I told him his mother should win an Oscar for her performance in front of all our relatives. No, he did not take offense. He laughed his heart out. We didn't take notice of what my mother-in-law said and went about our day in the hopes that everyone would move on from this fiasco my mother-in-law created. But just like how all happiness and peace is short-lived, so was ours. I received a strongly worded message 3 days later when I was at home alone. You'd think that I would have taken matters into my own hands and handled it, but I didn't. As much as I wanted to sound like a hero in this story, I'm not. I was frightened that she would send someone over to my place and threaten me. I know it sounds awfully silly for me to think this way, but I assure you, you have no idea what my mother-in-law is capable of. Just so you know to what length that she'll go to get her way, here's a brief intermission from the story. My distant cousin was about to get married to a white guy because they fell in love. Love always wins. Or so they say. But with my mother-in-law, no, it doesn't work like that. She brought up the same story about culture and heritage and how she was, quote, polluting our family name with his white blood. She caused a ruckus the week before the wedding and they broke off the marriage. The part of that story that scared me the most was threatening messages that she sent from an unknown number straight to the guy that she was going to marry. And you want to know what makes everything worse? She laughed and told Jagan that she was the one who sent those messages. Now that you know to what lengths that she'll go to get her way, I will say my fear is justified. I called Jagan and he must have been busy at work because he said he would discuss it once he's back. Those few hours were the most agonizing hours of my life. I did not pick up any calls, did not open any messages. What if she hired someone to hack my phone? Well, she didn't, because once Jagan got home, he called his mother after he read the messages and told her to back off, that our daughter's name was our choice and ours alone. She pretended as though she didn't know what we were talking about and said I was making up things, that I was a delusional person. So, Jagan hung up and in a fit of rage, stormed out of our house just to get a fresh breath of air, leaving me alone with a crying baby in my hands. To say I'm mentally broken is an absolute understatement. All I could think was, Why me? Jagan came back several hours later, drunk, and fell asleep right away. The only recurring thought I had was how one woman can mess up another family's life so much. How did she have so much power? Why did everyone give her so much power? She didn't deserve it. She only made a mess of everyone's lives except hers. The messages stopped and I thought it would be all over with, but no. Leave it to my mother-in-law to prolong an argument. That woman had some serious stamina. So, am I the a-hole for not wanting to change my baby's name after my mother-in-law's disapproval and causing this ongoing family drama? What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're enjoying your day so far. So we do have update number 1 to look at, and man, what a wild ride so far, and a serious overbearing mother-in-law. Today's story has 5 updates, so we're going to jump in the first one. If you're not subscribed to the story yet, make sure you smash that subscribe button, and let's get right into it. My mother-in-law has relentlessly tried to get us to change Aria's name. She had even gone the extra mile by sending me messages with a list of alternative names for our baby girl. She definitely had too much time on her hands. I ignored the messages, but I always kept Jagan in the loop, so he knew what was happening and would not suddenly take his mother's side. That was the last thing I wanted, losing my husband over such a petty drama. Do you know how Asian families need to keep every aunt and uncle updated about ongoing feuds? Well, my family was no different. Jagan and I had received several calls from aunties and uncles telling us to change the name, not to bring, quote, shame to the family. Can someone please explain to me how naming my child Aria, a perfectly normal name, is bringing shame to a family? Beats me. It's not like I named my child after a robot. Cue Elon Musk. Anyways, all they said was the name picked was not Indian enough, and that a name was always a way of telling a lot about a person. I don't exactly remember the last time I heard somebody's name and had an instant understanding of what the person's background was. We aren't all walking around with Iron Man's assistant Jarvis. Jagan told me to just politely nod my head and move on with life. That was how, well, he dealt with interfering aunts and uncles. So I did exactly that, hoping it would all stop and this nightmare would end. They all seem like robots, or rather duplicates of my mother-in-law. Replaying the same old messages, words unchanged, it felt as though I was listening to a one-recorded phone call. I get the importance of family history and culture. It's not that I don't. Please don't come at me with your explanations of family history and culture, because I've heard enough. But what I firmly believe is that my husband and I eventually have the final say in it. It's our child, after all. Tell me, when was the last time you consulted an entire village before naming your child? Never. I may seem petty for holding on to this matter for so long, and simply just not letting go. But all I ask for is the smallest grain of empathy. It's my child, who I carried for 9 whole months, and then birthed. Would that be the reason enough for me to pick the name for her? My mother-in-law clearly thinks that she has more rights over the children than I do. Otherwise, she would have dropped the issue a long time ago. Or was it her ego that stopped her from admitting defeat? I wouldn't know, but what I do know is I'm not going down without a fight. Jagan is backing me all the way up, and I just hope he continues to do so because his mother can be pretty influential in his thoughts. All she needs is one evening alone with him, and then I'm done for. Update number 2. Well, I'm guessing my mother-in-law spoke to Jagan over a call because he now seems torn between supporting me and appeasing to his mother. When was the last time an Asian man only supported his wife? I'm guessing the only reason he's torn between the two of us is that Aria is with me. A couple days ago, an aunt and uncle of Jagan's visit us to see the baby. Just so you know, they are pretty distantly related. So when I found out that they've heard about the drama, I wasn't really that surprised. Drama like this in the family tends to travel fast, and whose side do they always take? You guessed it, my mother-in-law's. The aunt had the audacity to tell me that I had to honor my mother-in-law's wishes, because she was the one who birthed my husband, and without my husband, I would never had a child. Excuse me, without me, my husband wouldn't have had a child. Who's keeping track? Not me. But just like there are enough relatives of ours who believe I should, quote, fulfill my mother-in-law's wishes, there are silent supporters of us. Don't judge me, but is it just me, or is it unfair that they remain silent supporters? Shouldn't everyone have the right to voice their opinion after all? I mean, we are in the land of dreams and possibilities, aren't we? The only issue is that my mother-in-law is too overbearing and crushes the very little freedom everyone in the family has. Oh, and before I forget to give you more context as to why my mother-in-law is a pain of a human being, she's the oldest of 8 siblings. I'm not saying when you're the oldest child it converts into you being able to call the shots. No. But the way my mother-in-law and her siblings operate, it sort of works out like that. My mother-in-law behaves as though she was born lucky, while the other siblings act as though they were lucky to be born. Talk about a dysfunctional family. When I saw Jagan's mother's family, I vowed then and there to never let my family end up like that. At least, I hope so. I'm not sure I'll continue with the updates, but I will definitely write if something else happens. Update number 3. Well, hey guys, it's been about a month since the fiasco went down, and the calls and texts from the extended family haven't stopped. Jagan is buckling under the pressure, and I'm writing this even though I had hoped all the drama would stop. Who am I kidding? With all this pressure burdening our small family, I've started to second-guess our decision. Wouldn't it be easier if we just caved and let mother-in-law have her way? It would guarantee us peace of mind and a little bit more privacy in our lives. I did tell Jagan my thoughts of late, and he looked as though he wanted to wholeheartedly agree with me. But I saw that he stopped himself from doing so and, quote, said, "No. If we give in to her this time, she will always expect us to, and I can't live like that." This is the only reason that's stopping me from raising the white flag and admitting defeat. One reason I feel increasingly pressured to change Aria's name is family gatherings have become so strained and awkward. I'm not talking about only our immediate family, but even our extended family. Last weekend, we had dinner at our uncle's just because Asians always have dinners. We don't really need a reason to. I like that about our culture, but there's always a but. With that, my mother-in-law has created a rift in the family. It makes dinners hardly enjoyable. It's only the wine and food that make it bearable. In my opinion, anyways, no one seems to want to talk to me, and if they do, it's only because they feel sorry I'm alone, and I can't stand a conversation I've had that was out of pity. It makes me feel so low and useless. But Jagan, on the other hand, isn't facing the pressure as much as I do. I guess it's to do with the way men operate. They either drink or talk about politics. Jagan said that a couple of older uncles had asked him and he had changed the subject with the upcoming elections. But that's not how women work. Women are so complicated and dramatic that they only make life hard for themselves. I know, I shouldn't be generalizing, but hey, I'm a woman. And I'm dealing with women, it's just tiring. The dinner that we've gone for was the most unbearable one that we've been to. My mother-in-law ignored me the whole time, and when I tried to approach her to greet her, she turned her face and walked away in a huff. Talk about being a middle school kid. If that wasn't embarrassing enough, no one spoke to me, and I sat alone in the corner of the room the whole night. At some point, I think the woman had gone into the kitchenette, and all I could hear was peals of laughter echoing through the hall. The men were outside in the garden at this time, and I sat there alone in the living room with a couple of kids glued to their devices. I would have paid so much money just to leave that place right then and there. But I had to suck it up. I guess another reason no one wants to risk being seen with me is that my mother-in-law can be absolutely ruthless. She'll just poison everyone's minds against good Samaritans who spoke at me for pity. The only silver lining to the dark cloud was Aria. When I told Jagan about the night and how awful it was, he just told me I was being dramatic. After a long night of being ostracized, hearing Jagan speak in his cruel ways was the least straw that I could handle. I broke down into tears when we got back home as I nursed Aria back to sleep. She was only my reason to go on, and all I'm hoping is that Jagan won't side with that woman. Calling her a woman is an insult to all women. She's lower than that. I'll keep you all updated. I think I might just cave in. It's begun to become too tiring for me. Update number 4. This was the last thing that I would do, but here I am writing this because I feel like a total failure. Have you ever tried something you thought would work but failed miserably? You would have, because what is life without pitfalls? Well, the pitfall I went through left me in a dark hole for a couple of days. Before I continue about my emotions and feelings, let me take you guys for a soap opera that I call Keeping Up with the Lagares. The Kardashians pale against my mother-in-law, trust me. I reached out to my mother-in-law with an olive branch, and guess what she did? Stepped on it and smashed it right in front of my face. Not literally, but more metaphorically. With all the drama and tension in the family, I only felt responsible for it all because it was my daughter and her name that we were fighting over. So, I messaged my mother-in-law that I want to meet her in person at a cafe up the street. I told her I didn't have much time as Jagan had to work dinner, and he could keep Aria for only about an hour. I'm sure that it's normal for you to celebrate around your house when your mother-in-law replies to a text because that's precisely what I did. Celebration aside, I rushed to get ready and headed over to the cafe. I ordered 2 cups of coffee and waited. Let me get one thing straight. I hate when people are late. Yeah, there's traffic, yeah, things come up, but I know my mother-in-law has nothing on her plate. Given that she's a maid and a driver, and that's a lot in the US, unlike in Asian countries. Not only did she show up half an hour late, but from the onset of our meeting, she would never make eye contact with me. Our conversation consisted of sighs and frustrated noises. You think we were sitting opposite of an animal. No offense to my mother-in-law, but she can be very childish. Anyways, I start with how I miss having regular family reunions and get-togethers, and would love for Aria to get closer to her extended family, even her grandmother. She looked at me then, and when I tell you I felt victorious, I really did. Except everything went downhill really fast. At that moment, I knew I had her attention, so I told her how Jagan and I had thought about the name for so long, and the reason we picked it because it meant melody. Isn't that such a pretty name? Well, my mother-in-law did not think so. This time she looked me in the eye, and I think it was only because we were in a cafe. She stopped herself from slapping me across the face. It was that very reason I chose a public cafe. She breaks out into how I don't know anything about her family history, her heritage, and culture, and that I ruin everything with my presence. Before I move on, you need to know a key detail in this whole fiasco. My mother-in-law has been referring to my daughter by the name Lakshmi. Yeah, she doesn't know her boundaries. Besides, I didn't have the energy to keep correcting her throughout the entire conversation because this is what she told me. Deepika, you don't know anything. You've been living in a fool's paradise from day one, and if you just let me take control of things and run things the way they should in our family, then you wouldn't have gotten into this mess now, would you? This is all your fault and yours alone, and if you don't change your name to Lakshmi, may all the gods curse you and your wretched parents for bringing you a disobedient wife and daughter-in-law into my world. I'm sure my darling Jagan would not have agreed to this. Your magic and spells have my son in a trance. Well, I didn't know if the curse she laid upon my parents and myself or the magic part, because I completely lost it. I don't remember everything I said because I was so enraged. Yeah, that seems to be happening to me a lot. But what I do remember was standing up in a huff and telling her off before storming out of that cafe. I was glad the cafe wasn't too crowded since I was a regular, and the last thing I wanted was for the whole neighborhood to hear about my problems and judge me. So yeah, I did not reconcile with my mother-in-law. It only drove a bigger wedge between my family and her. Now, is this really a problem? Drop your comments down below, guys. Thank you so much for paying attention. I will update you when I know some more. Update number 5. Final update of the story. It's been a few months. Hey guys, it's been a few months since I've updated and met my mother-in-law at a cafe. It's been almost 2 since the whole fiasco, and it's gone down at the dinner. Jagan and I have no contact with my mother-in-law and the family except for a few aunts and uncles, and cousins who are secretive about their ties with us. I don't know if I'm a fool or not, but I'm beginning to second-guess our decision to stick to the name we picked for our daughter. Jagan rarely ever calls his mother, and when he does, it always ends up in an argument where he screams violently at her and then hangs up the phone. Just so you have some perspective of the relationship between Jagan and his mother before the whole drama, he was a mama's boy, the golden child, the one who would do anything for his mom, and she looked after him as though he was her only child even though he has 4 other siblings. So, he's been in an awful mood lately. This whole fiasco is not only affecting our relationship with my mother-in-law and our extended family, but also between the two of us. Jagan has been supportive of me from the beginning, especially when it comes to standing up for what he wanted. Still, I don't think he had factored in being cut off by the family when he supported me because he passes these snide remarks occasionally. It's not that I'm holding him responsible. Still, it can be challenging to maintain my patience with him, knowing that he is completely angry with me, but rather with his mother. I've also started to think about Aria and her future, not knowing her grandmother. Every grandchild wants to meet their grandparents. What would I tell her? What would I tell her when she finds out that we don't move with half of our extended family? I know I'm overthinking it because when I voiced these concerns to Jagan, he said we'd cross those bridges when it came time. Ever so often, I think about, the lasting impact it would have on our family, and it just causes more stress for me, and I end up fighting with Jagan. I know there's no point of crying over spilt milk, but it's my family's future we're talking about. I spoke to Jagan about signing up for couples therapy, and he argued that we needed it with everything that's gone down. I know it's nothing to be ashamed of, but Jagan and I decide we would not speak about it to anyone. I think it's an Asian thing, and the stigma associated with therapy and mental health. Yeah, it's sad that life's become so gray and dark. To think one person could cause so much harm baffles my mind, and all over such an insignificant matter. I just hope it works. After 2 sessions with the therapist, Jagan and I feel much better. Let me tell you this. If you have a problem, go speak to a professional. I felt low and dejected for so many weeks, blaming myself for this whole drama, when in reality, it wasn't my fault at all. I know you must be thinking, no crap, Sherlock. But the therapist said we had every right to name our child whatever we wanted, and we didn't have to feel guilty about it. I guess she's correct because I can see a change in Jagan too. He's been happier and less on edge about the whole drama with his mom. He does call her, he does talk to her, but Aria will never know her grandmother unless my mother-in-law decides to drop her ego and finally come visit her first grandchild. So, I have no regrets about sticking to my decision. Toxic, controlling people will always be toxic and controlling, irrespective of the relationship they ruin. And to be very honest, I'd rather have Aria stay away from a woman who would not bat an eye before cutting ties with her. Today's story seems to be another case of an overbearing mother-in-law, but this one might be the worst, because not only is she just popping in for visits every now and then, she's trying to change the entire dynamic of the relationship and how OP even relates to their family, dragging in aunts and uncles to take her side simply because she doesn't have a say in the naming of the child, which is none of her business really. But I would like to hear from you guys. Do you think that what is happening is 100% legit, and OP definitely gets the decision since it's her kid, not the mother-in-law? Or are you on the other side of the comment section, where you think the mother-in-law should have a say in the name? If you don't agree with each other, that's cool. Let's talk about it in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed today's content. That's going to be all the videos for today. If you're not subscribed to the channel, take a second right now, click that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.